Hi children, in the previous session we discussed about digestion at stomach. Okay, when we take the food material, that food material masticated in the mouth and prepare the bolus. Bolus moved through the esophagus finally reached into the stomach. So in the stomach, especially the stomach walls, okay, the stomach walls are made up with the gastric glands. So these gastric glands are released the HCl and pepsin. HCl and pepsin. Okay, so these HCl and pepsin is also called as gastric juices. Okay, yeah, the function of HCl, so which kill the microorganisms present in the food material, and second, so it create an acidic environment. So because of the acidic environment only, the pepsin works on proteins to convert it as an peptides. Okay, so the enzyme which is released from the gastric gland, so which is pepsin, this pepsin converted into the proteins into the peptides. By the action of pepsin, the proteins are digested and break down into the peptides. Okay, so this mixing of gastric juices with the bolus, so to form a very slurry material, so which is called as chyme. So after the digestion at stomach, so a very little amount of the food material so is entered into the U-shaped body that located end of the stomach, so which is called as duodenum. Okay, so a superior portion of the duodenum that contain a wall, so which is called as pyrolic sphincter. So actually the food that partially stored in the stomach, so this food very slowly, a little amount of the food that is entered into the duodenum by the opening of pyrolic sphincter. So just to see the peak here, so the superior portion of the duodenum that contain pyrolic sphincter, by the opening of the pyrolic sphincter, the food present in that stomach, so which is called chyme. Okay, the chyme is entered into the U-shaped body, so which is called as duodenum. Okay, so just you see that next peak. So this is a digestive enzyme. So already we discussed the digestion at mouth and digestion at stomach. Okay, so in the mouth the salivary glands are present. Okay, the salivary glands are released the enzyme which is called as ptyalin, so which is also called as salivary amylase. Okay, these salivary glands are released the ptyalin enzyme into the buccal cavity. So these salivary glands are released the saliva. Okay, these saliva mainly contain ptyalin enzyme, so which act on carbohydrates that are converted into the maltose sugars. The complex carbohydrates are converted into the maltose sugars by the enzymatic action of salivary amylase. So this digestion process that takes place in the buccal cavity or mouth. Okay, oral cavity or mouth. Okay, coming to the next enzyme, what it is? Pepsin. Okay, this pepsin secreted by the gastric glands which located in the gastric wall of the stomach. Okay, so these gastric glands are released the pepsin into the stomach, so it is called as gastric juice. So this gastric juice especially works on or act on proteins to convert the peptones. So already I told you the gastric glands are also released the HCl. So that create an acidic environment. So in the acidic environment, so this peptin is very active to convert the proteins into the peptones. Okay, so this is digestive system at stomach. Okay, so in this gastric glands, so also release the mucilage. Okay, so this mucilage so protect the stomach walls. So with the HCl, because of the gastric glands are also release the HCl. So when these HCl so also damage the gastric wall. So that's why so the stomach that releases a special type of substances which is called as mucilage. So this mucilage can protect the gastric walls from the HCl. Okay, now coming to that, after that digestion at stomach, so the food is slowly entered into the U-shaped body, so that is called as duodenum. Okay, so here the duodenum that mainly connected with the two glands here. Okay, remember carefully. Okay, the duodenum is mainly connected with the two glands. Okay, so one gland that is liver and second gland that is in a pancreas. Liver and pancreas. Okay, so especially the liver gland, so that contain no enzymes, so it releases the bile juices, and which are also called as bile pigment. So there are two type of bile juices are there. One is biliverdin and second one is in a biliverdin and bilirubin. Okay, so these are the two pigments that are released into the duodenum, so which is react with that food material or mixed with the food material that present in the duodenum, and these bile juices can convert the fats into the simple small globules, large fats into the simple small globules. Okay, so this process is called as emulsification. What it is called? Emulsification nothing but, so the large fat molecules are converted to the simple or small fat globules, by the action of bile juices, so which phenomenon is called as emulsification? What it is called? Emulsification. Okay, so the emulsification takes place in the duodenum by the releasing of bile juices from the liver. Okay, so it can convert the large fat molecules into the simple small globulins. Okay, so this is called bile juices and emulsification. Okay, now coming to the another gland which is connected with the duodenum, that is pancreas. Okay, so the pancreas is also connected with the duodenum. So these pancreas that releases the three enzymes. Okay, one is an amylase and second one is in a trypsin and third one is in a lipase. Okay, amylase, trypsin and lipase. Okay, so these three enzymes released from pancreas and released into the duodenum. Okay, so which is also mixed with the food material that present in the duodenum. Okay, present in the duodenum, the food material that contain carbohydrates, fats and proteins. Okay, so here the amylase, so which is released from the pancreas, so it can convert the carbohydrates into the maltose sugars, and coming to the trypsin enzyme, so which can convert proteins into the peptones enzyme. Okay, which can convert into the proteins into the peptides or peptones, and third enzyme which is in a lipase. Okay, so these lipases can convert the fats into the fatty acids and glycerols. Okay, so these amylase, trypsin and lipases collectively called as pancreatic juices. Okay, so remember one thing, the pancreatic juices that contain three enzymes. One is amylase, second one is trypsin, third one lipase. Okay, so the first one amylase, so which is related to the salivary amylase. So salivary amylase that convert the carbohydrates into the maltose, so at the mouth only. But here amylase, so that can convert the carbohydrates into the maltose sugars at the duodenum part of the alimentary canal. Okay, now coming to the second enzyme, what it is? Trypsin. Okay, so the trypsin can convert the proteins into the peptones, and lipases act on fats and convert into the fatty acids and glycerols. Okay, so it is a very important. So the digestion at duodenum. Okay, so there are two glands are connected with the duodenum. One gland is liver and second gland is pancreas. So the liver do not release any kind of enzyme, so it releases the bile pigment, so which are called bilirubin and biliverdin. Okay, so this biliverdin pigment that can convert the large fat molecules into the simple globulin, which process is called as emulsification. Okay, so the pancreas release the pancreatic juices into the duodenum, that is amylase, trypsin, lipases. Amylase convert the carbohydrates into maltose. Trypsin can convert the proteins into peptones, and lipases can convert the fats into fatty acids and glycerols. Okay, so after that digestion at duodenum, so the food that entered into the small intestine. Okay, so this small intestine that contain the intestinal gland, and these intestinal glands that releases the intestinal juices. Okay, intestinal juices. So which are mainly contain intestinal juices that mainly contain two enzymes. So which is peptidases and sucrases. Peptidases and sucrases. Okay, these peptidases and sucrases that are collectively called as succus entericus. What it is called? Succus entericus. Okay, so the intestinal juices is also called as succus entericus. So it contains two enzymes. One is peptidases and second one is an sucrases. Okay, here the peptidases is act on peptides. Peptidases is act on peptides. That peptides are converted into the or break down into the simple amino acids. Peptides are fully converted into the amino acids. And whatever the sucroses, maltose sugars and other sugars and cane sugars. So these sucroses are converted into the glucose by the action of sucrase enzyme. Sucrase enzyme. So finally, the food contain carbohydrates, so which are converted into the glucose. The food contain protein, which are converted into the amino acid. The food contain fat molecules, which are converted into the fatty acids and glycerol. So these digestive fatty acids and glycerols and amino acids and glucose is absorbed by the small intestine system. Small intestine system, and then the molecules which are absorbed and reached into the blood. Okay, through this blood, so the molecules which are supplied to the each and every cell, and that molecules are utilized for the growth and development of the organisms. Okay, so this is in a complete digestive enzymes table. Complete digestive enzymes table. The first one represents, serial number 1 represents digestion at mouth. Serial number 2 represents digestion at stomach. 3, 4, 5, 6 represents digestion at duodenum. And 7, 8 serial number that represents the digestion at small intestine. Okay, so in the small intestine the complete digestion processes takes place, and they form the fatty acids and glycerols and amino acids and glucose that are absorbed by the special finger-like projections that are present in the small intestines, which are called as microvilli. Okay, microvilli absorb these very simple digestive materials into the blood, and blood carry these materials into each and every cell. Okay, so as you see here, the opening of stomach into the duodenum is guarded by the sphincter. That name is pyrolic sphincter. Pyrolic sphincter. Okay, by the opening of pyrolic sphincter, a small amount of the food material is entered into the duodenum. Okay, so the small intestine distinguished into the three parts. I already told you. So the first one is in a U-shaped first part, which is called as duodenum, and longer coiled middle portion, which is called as jejunum, and highly coiled posterior part, which is connected with the large intestine system, is called ileum. Okay, so these are the small three parts that are mainly present in the small intestine system. Okay, first U-shaped body, then nothing but it is in a posterior part of the stomach. Okay, and first part of the small intestine, that is called duodenum. Okay, and longer coiled middle portion, which is called as jejunum, and highly coiled posterior part of the small intestine is called as ileum, which is mainly connected with the large intestine. Okay, so this is in a flow chart of that alimentary canal. So the first food that taken into the mouth. Okay, so in the buccal cavity, so it is undergo mastication to prepare the bolus by the mixing of saliva with it. Okay, so in the buccal cavity, the teeth and tongues are helpful for the mastication process. So in the mastication, the food become slurry and slippery and very soft in condition, and the slurry, slippery, soft condition food that present in the buccal cavity is called bolus. Okay, so in the bolus, especially the saliva is mixed. In the saliva, what is present? Salivary amylase or ptyalin is present. Okay, so this salivary amylase or ptyalin so can convert the carbohydrates into the maltose sugars. So after that, from the buccal cavity, the food is entered into the pharynx, and then it is entered into the food pipe, which is also called as esophagus. That shows the peristaltic movement. So due to the peristaltic movement, the food is easily moved from the buccal cavity to the cardiac stomach. Okay, so in the cardiac stomach, the food is digested by the releasing of gastric juices. So that is HCl and pepsin. Okay, pepsin convert the proteins into the peptides. Proteins into the peptides. Okay, so then cardiac stomach to pyrolic stomach. The pyrolic stomach that have an sphincter that is called as pyloric sphincter. Okay, this pyloric sphincter, when it is opening, the food is entered into the duodenum, which is connected with the two glands. One is liver and second one is pancreas. The liver releases the bile juices, so which can convert the fat molecules into the small fat globulins. Okay, which is process is called as emulsification. Okay, the pancreas that releases the pancreatic juice, so which contain three enzymes. One is amylase, second one is trypsin, third one is lipases. Okay, amylase convert the carbohydrates into the maltose sugar, trypsin convert the proteins into the peptides, and lipases convert the fat molecules or fatty acids and glycerols. Okay, so after the duodenum, the food is entered into the small intestine. Okay, so in the small intestine, the intestinal glands are released the intestinal juice, which is also called as succus entericus. Okay, succus entericus mainly contain two enzymes. One is peptidase and second one is sucrases. So peptidase convert the peptides into the amino acids and sucrases convert the sucrose into the glucoses. So whatever the waste material that present in the small intestine is moved towards the large intestine and finally it is stored in the rectum. So when it is filled in the rectum, so the food is expelled out from the waste food is expelled out from the anus. Okay, so this is a flow chart of alimentary canal. So that shows each and every part. Okay, now coming to that absorption of the food material at a small intestine. Okay, so if you see that internal layer of the small intestine, so it is especially made up of the epithelial cells. Okay, so actually it shows it is an epithelial cell. These epithelial cells that produce a finger-like projection. Okay, so these finger-like projections, so which are mainly called as villi, So just you see it is. Okay, so actually it is an epithelial layer of the small intestine. So it produces a finger-like projection. Okay, so it is in one finger and it is in another finger-like. So many number of the finger-like projections are produced towards the inner side of that small intestine, so which are called as villi. Okay, so these villis are highly supplied with the blood vessels. So blood vessels are blood capillaries, and these blood capillaries to form a network like such to form an arteries and veins. Okay, the food passes through that. When the food is carried out through that small intestine, the digested food is absorbed by the villi, and this villi is helpful for the absorption of the food material from the small intestine, and that food is entered into the capillaries and finally reached into the arteries and finally reached into the blood, and with the help of artery, so the blood supplied to the each and every cell of the body Okay, so these are the digestive glands. I already told you, one is a salivary glands found in mouth. There are three types of salivary glands are there. Yeah, parotid, sublingual and submaxillary. Okay, so which secrete the saliva which contain tyalin enzyme, so which is also called as salivary amylase, so can convert the carbohydrates into the maltose sugars. And second one is in a pancreas, secrete into the duodenum, okay, which is also called as pancreatic juices. And liver, that are called bile juices. Gastric glands, gastric juices. And intestinal glands, intestinal juices are also called as succus entericus. Okay, so these are the various glands which are connected with the digestive system and release the enzymes and bile juices, and that are helpful for the digestion of food material. So in the alimentary canal. Okay, so this is the digestion process, and in the next class, so we go through that assimilation and digestion process, and the problems in alimentary canal we also discuss in the next class. Thank you.